For the first time in history, more Americans over 65 are living alone than with family, nearly 28%. And that number isn't slowing down, it's rising every single year. On the surface, that might sound alarming. You've probably heard the whispers, it's unsafe. It must be lonely. What if something happens? These fears often come from well-meaning children, friends, and neighbors who believe living alone after retirement is a recipe for decline. But the truth, backed by growing research, is far more surprising. Many seniors who live alone actually report greater happiness, sharper independence, and a stronger sense of dignity than those who don't. Imagine walking into a home where the decor reflects only your taste, meals happen on your schedule, and the quiet isn't emptiness, it's peace. Imagine family visits that are joyful because they're chosen, not forced by obligation. This is the untold reality for millions of older Americans today. In the next few minutes, we're going to uncover why more seniors are embracing this lifestyle and how it's reshaping not only their health and daily routines but also their family bonds and personal identities. And before we dive in, hit like and subscribe, because independence after 60 isn't just possible, it's powerful. Meet Dolly Merriman, 76, a retired public librarian from Oregon. Even after stepping away from her career, Dolly never stopped being surrounded by books. She still hosts what she calls her silent reading nights, just for herself. She sets the kettle on for chamomile tea, arranges a plate of shortbread cookies, and curls up with her favorite novels. Next to her chair sits a stack of sticky notes, ready to mark passages that make her laugh, cry, or simply pause in thought. It's her quirky ritual, one that keeps her connected to the life of stories she once shared with generations of students. But Dolly's story takes an unexpected turn. After her husband's passing, her grown children assumed she'd do what many widowed mothers do: move closer to them, trade her independence for proximity, and rely on their homes as her safe haven. They pleaded with her, worried about her safety and loneliness. Yet Dolly shocked them all by choosing the opposite. She decided to remain in her own cozy cottage, alone. She described it as not an act of resistance, but of rediscovery. "I didn't want to be just a guest in someone else's life," she explained. "I wanted to keep building my own." Her choice didn't create distance with her children. Instead, it reframed their relationship in surprising ways and gave her the freedom to live on her own terms. Her story reveals why living alone isn't about isolation, it's about rediscovering who you are. Step 1. Independence as a health booster, 2:01 to 3 o'clock. One of the biggest surprises experts have uncovered is this: seniors who live alone often move more, not less. Without realizing it, independence builds in natural activity. Cooking meals instead of waiting for someone else to prepare them, walking through the garden to water plants, carrying laundry baskets, or strolling to the corner store. These aren't workouts in the gym, but they create steady, everyday movement that keeps muscles stronger, circulation flowing, and the mind sharper. It's not about pushing harder, it's about the way small actions add up into health. For Dolly Merriman, this discovery was life-changing. She laughed as she told her daughter, "I walk to my farmer's market every Saturday. That stroll keeps me healthier than any pill I've been prescribed." She wasn't exaggerating. Recent 2025 studies show that seniors who integrate natural walking into their routines report lower stress, better balance, and fewer hospital visits. The act of simply buying fresh vegetables or chatting briefly with a vendor gives structure and purpose to her week, all while keeping her physically active. And it's not just about exercise, it's about confidence. Living alone means she doesn't hand off every chore. Dolly manages her mail, tidies her shelves, and rearranges her beloved books when she feels like it. Each of these small acts tells her body, "I'm still capable. I still matter." That mental boost is just as important as the physical one. For many women over 60, independence isn't a burden. It's the very thing that keeps their health from sliding. What's one small habit you've noticed keeps you moving each day? Let us know in the comments. You might inspire someone else to try it. By reframing chores and routines as subtle health protectors, Dolly turned what others once feared, a woman living alone, into her personal prescription for wellness. But staying active was only the beginning. The real surprise came when her independence reshaped how her family treated her. Step 2. Freedom in daily choices, 3:01 to 4 o'clock. One of the greatest, yet least talked about, gifts of living alone after retirement is the ability to shape your days entirely on your own terms. No compromises, no negotiations, no silent sacrifices. For many older women, it's the first time in decades they can wake up when their body says so, not when someone else's alarm clock rings or when breakfast is expected on the table. Independence means the freedom to eat oatmeal at midnight if you feel like it, or sip coffee in bed until noon. These may sound like small things, but for seniors who have spent their lives adjusting to children's schedules, spouses' preferences, and work deadlines, this kind of autonomy feels revolutionary. For Dolly Merriman, it was as simple and as profound as changing her living room. For years, her husband had preferred muted tones, browns, and greys. After his passing, Dolly finally let her spirit speak. She repainted the walls a cheerful yellow, added turquoise throw pillows, and placed fresh daffodils in the corner every week. The first time she stepped back to admire her work, she whispered, "It finally feels like my house." That single decision became symbolic of everything she had reclaimed, the right to live in a space that reflected her joy, not someone else's taste. And Dolly isn't alone. Surveys in 2025 show that seniors who live independently often report greater satisfaction in their home environment. Why? Because every detail, what's on the TV, what's in the fridge, what music fills the air, is a personal choice, not a compromise. There's empowerment in knowing you can fall asleep to classical music one night and old westerns the next without a single complaint from anyone else. This freedom also extends beyond comfort. It nurtures identity. Seniors often struggle with the feeling of being absorbed into their families' lives, losing sight of who they are outside of being a parent, a spouse, or a grandparent. But Dolly's bold living room transformation reminded her that she still had preferences, still had creativity, and still had the right to live in color, literally. If you could redecorate just one room in your home without anyone else's input, what colors or themes would you choose? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your vision. But freedom at home was only half the story. The bigger surprise came when Dolly realized her independence reshaped her relationship with her family in ways she never expected. Step 3. Stronger family bonds, 4:01 to 5 o'clock. One of the most surprising outcomes of living alone in later life is how it transforms family relationships. Many people assume that if a senior chooses to live independently, it creates distance or disconnection. But research and countless personal stories show the opposite. It often strengthens bonds. Why? Because when family time is no longer about constant caregiving or hovering concern, it becomes about joy, respect, and presence. For Dolly Merriman, this shift was almost immediate. In the early months after her husband passed, her children worried constantly. They'd call her daily, often opening with anxious questions. "Are you okay, Mom? Did you eat? Did you remember your medication?" Dolly admitted those conversations made her feel less like a capable adult and more like a fragile patient under watch. But once she chose to live on her own and established her new routines, something changed. She began to sound lighter, more confident, and even excited when she answered the phone. Her daughter noticed it first. On a visit one Saturday afternoon, she hugged Dolly and said, "Mom, you're happier now, I don't worry as much." Instead of checking cupboards to see if her mother had food stocked or rushing to replace light bulbs, her daughter sat down for tea in Dolly's newly redecorated yellow and turquoise living room. They laughed, swapped book recommendations, and even planned a weekend farmers market outing together. The relationship shifted from one of obligation, where visits felt like chores, to one of genuine connection. This is a reality many seniors across the US are discovering. Living alone doesn't cut ties, it rewrites them. Adult children stop feeling like constant monitors and start enjoying their parents' company again. Grandchildren stop seeing grandma as someone we have to check on and instead as someone fun to visit. Studies in 2025 even highlight that seniors who live independently report fewer tense interactions with family, precisely because they can set boundaries and invite connection rather than endure it. Dolly summarized it perfectly. "When I moved into my own rhythm, my family didn't lose me, they got back the real me. And that's who they wanted to spend time with." Have you noticed visits feel different when they're about connection instead of obligation? Share your experience in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. But it wasn't just family bonds that grew stronger. Dolly discovered another unexpected gift of living alone, the chance to reconnect with passions she had left behind for decades. Step 4. Building new social circles, 5:01 to 6 o'clock. One of the biggest fears families express when a senior chooses to live alone is, what if they get lonely? But loneliness and solitude aren't the same thing. In fact, when seniors embrace living independently, they often find themselves creating new, more meaningful social circles that they never would have discovered otherwise. Instead of relying solely on family visits or old friendships that may have faded, they start looking outward, toward neighbors, clubs, and communities designed for connection. In 2025, this is more than a trend, it's a movement. Across the United States, solo senior meetups are popping up in community centers, libraries, and even coffee shops. Some towns now host community co-living days, where older adults who live alone gather for shared meals, movie nights, or group classes, creating a rhythm of companionship without sacrificing independence. Studies from AARP show that seniors engaged in these types of activities report lower levels of depression and higher satisfaction with daily life compared to those who rely only on family for social contact. For Dolly Merriman, this new chapter of social connection came through something wonderfully simple, a walking book club. Once a week, she and a small group of women, most of them also living alone, would meet at a local park, tie on their sneakers, and walk together while discussing the week's book selection. Dolly described it as a double gift, exercise for my body and conversation for my spirit. At the end of each session, they'd sit at a bench, laugh, sometimes cry, and always promise to meet again. She admitted, "It gave me sisters I never had." For someone who once assumed her social circle had reached its limit after retirement, Dolly found that living alone actually expanded it. No longer confined to the same routines with her late husband or depending on her children for company, she discovered friendships that were chosen, fresh, and deeply supportive. This is the overlooked truth. Independence doesn't mean isolation. It often sparks creativity in building a social network. Seniors who live alone are more likely to knock on a neighbor's door, join a community class, or sign up for local events because they know connection matters. And when those connections are made by choice, not obligation, they carry a special kind of joy. If you've joined a group or found new friends after 60, what's been your favorite way to connect? Drop it in the comments. You might inspire someone else to take that first step. But as Dolly discovered, building new circles of friendship was only part of the story. The deeper surprise came in how this independence built her confidence and reshaped how she saw herself every single day. Step 5. Confidence through self-reliance, 6:01 to 7 o'clock. When many people imagine seniors living alone, they picture fragility, constant calls for help, dependence on family, and daily struggles with basic tasks. But research and lived experience tell a very different story. For many older adults, handling daily responsibilities on their own doesn't weaken them, it strengthens them. Self-reliance builds confidence, dignity, and resilience in ways no amount of helping hands can. For Dolly Merriman, the retired librarian, it began with small victories. She remembers the first time she fixed a leaky kitchen faucet by herself. It wasn't perfect, the handle dripped once or twice, but she tightened it, cleaned up the mess, and stepped back with a smile. "Every time I fix a leaky faucet, I remind myself, I'm still capable." That little act of self-repair was more than plumbing. It was proof she hadn't lost her ability to solve problems and manage her home. Living alone meant Dolly had to manage her bills, plan her meals, and keep her cottage in order. At first, her children worried this would overwhelm her. Instead, it had the opposite effect. She began organizing her finances with apps tailored for seniors, setting up automatic payments, and even creating a weekly budget tea time where she sipped her favorite chamomile while reviewing her accounts. She called it "my quiet meeting with myself." Cooking for one also became less of a burden and more of a celebration. Dolly experimented with small batch recipes she found online: soups, casseroles, even homemade bread. She said the act of preparing meals for herself made her feel cared for, not by others, but by her own two hands. It was as if every chopped carrot whispered, "You're still here, you're still strong, and you're still providing." Experts in aging agree. Self-reliance is one of the strongest predictors of emotional well-being in later years. Studies from the National Institute on Aging highlight that older adults who take an active role in daily tasks report higher self-esteem and lower rates of depression compared to those who are over-assisted. Confidence comes from competence, and competence comes from doing. Dolly's children noticed the change too. Instead of worrying, they started admiring her independence. Her son told her, "Mom, you sound happier when you tell me about your week. It's like you're proud of yourself again." And he was right. Each task Dolly completed, whether balancing her checkbook, watering her plants, or tightening a loose hinge, wasn't just about maintenance. It was about reclaiming identity, strength, and self-worth. What's one small task you've handled on your own recently that made you feel proud? Share it in the comments. You never know who you might inspire. But Dolly's journey didn't just build confidence. The next surprise was quieter, softer, and it reshaped how she experienced her days in a way her family never expected. Step 6. Redefining loneliness. For decades, silence has been painted as the enemy of aging. Families whisper, "What if Mom is lonely?" Neighbors assume quiet houses hide sadness. And many seniors themselves dread the long evenings, fearing the ticking clock and empty chairs. But what if silence wasn't a punishment? What if it was a sanctuary? Increasingly, older adults are discovering that living alone after retirement doesn't mean being swallowed by loneliness, it means redefining it. For Dolly Merriman, the 76-year-old retired librarian, the shift was profound. After her husband passed, she remembers walking into her cottage one evening and hearing nothing but the creak of the floorboards. It felt suffocating, as though the walls were closing in. She admitted, "At first, the quiet scared me more than anything. It made me feel invisible." But then something changed. Dolly began leaning into the quiet rather than running from it. She started her mornings with tea and a soft hymn playing in the background, followed by stretches in complete silence. She journaled before bed, writing down reflections she never had space for when life was filled with noise. Soon, what once felt like absence began to feel like abundance. She now calls it her choir of calm. Psychologists who study aging say this is a growing trend, reframing solitude as restorative instead of isolating. Seniors who embrace reflective practices like prayer, meditation, journaling, or simply sitting by a window often report lower stress, improved sleep, and a deeper sense of self. Quiet time isn't empty. It's an opportunity to reconnect with your own voice. Dolly noticed creativity blossoming in the silence. She began writing short stories again, something she hadn't done since her college days. The stillness gave her space to imagine, to wander in her thoughts, and to create. She even started sketching her favorite flowers, turning her dining table into what she jokingly called "my little art studio." Her family noticed the difference. Instead of describing her days as lonely, she began talking about discoveries. What she wrote, what she drew, the new ideas that came during her quiet mornings. Her daughter admitted, "I thought the silence would break you, Mom. But it made you more alive." And this is the hidden truth. Silence, when chosen, becomes a source of power. It allows older adults to slow down without feeling left behind. It becomes the backdrop for reflection, gratitude, and even joy. Dolly explained it best. "Loneliness faded the moment I realized I was keeping myself company." Do you enjoy quiet time, or does it still feel uncomfortable? Share in the comments. I'd love to know how you see it. But Dolly's journey doesn't end here. Her embrace of solitude didn't just bring peace, it transformed into a lasting legacy her family could never have predicted. As we close, let's take a moment to walk back through Dolly Merriman's journey. A journey that mirrors what so many seniors across the country are quietly experiencing. Living alone after retirement isn't about emptiness. It's about independence, choosing your own rhythms, meals, and mornings. It's about freedom, painting your walls any color you like, decorating with joy instead of compromise. It's about building stronger family ties, where visits feel warm and intentional rather than obligatory. It's about stepping into new social circles, from book clubs to walking groups, where friendships feel fresh and life-giving. It's about regaining confidence, knowing you can still pay bills, fix faucets, and handle daily life with grace. And finally, it's about discovering peace, that choir of calm Dolly found when silence became her sanctuary. Dolly reflected with a smile. Living alone didn't mean being left behind, it meant stepping forward. And in that simple truth, she reframed what so many fear about aging into something powerful: choice, dignity, and renewal. If Dolly's story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who deserves to see that living alone can be a gift, not a burden. And before you go, here's a little tease. Our next video dives into 7 surprising myths about aging that seniors are finally breaking in 2025. Trust me, you won't want to miss how today's older adults are rewriting the rules of what it means to grow older.